Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us for another one of our HFA webinars. I'm Mark Schumacher, the CEO of the Home Furnishings Association, to welcome you here. I think you better have this either connected to our recording or have your pen and paper ready, because we're going to have a ton of takeaways today on a subject that is absolutely common for every member of ours, frankly, every retailer, and that is employee retention, staff retention. We had a great program a few weeks back talking about acquisition, but we know that it's really difficult. Everybody's talking about ways to retain their employees. So we're going to have a lot of great takeaways today with a great panel. Before we begin, however, I want to mention that on the right side of your screen, you have the ability in the little chat box there. If you want to send us a question, please do it. We'll do our best to get to that. We already have the whole long list of questions that you all put in when you signed up, but we can always add more. And we have a great resource, myhfa.org/webinar. You will find this webinar plus all the others we have done. It's a library of incredible information. You can play the webinars whenever you'd like to your teams. We know a lot of people that are doing that, so please take advantage of that. But I don't want to waste any more time and to get into our discussion today. We've got a great panel as always. I want to introduce Sarah Luther. She's Director of Talent and Employee Experience at Home Trends. They are an Ashley Home Store franchisee in Nebraska. Sarah, we appreciate having you here. Also, we have Irene Fostick here. She's Senior VP of Human Resources with Levin Furniture and John B. Schultz. They are up, generally speaking, all over the Pennsylvania and surrounding area. And then we are also joined by Tracy Jackson. She is our HFA Chief HR Strategist, great resource. You're going to see a lot of great items from Tracy on our website as well. So, ladies, thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it. Got a lot to discuss today. This is going to be a lot of, I think, rapid fire questions too, because I want to get to so many of them today. But let me throw this one out first. You guys know me well enough that I like to sort of just do a general question out of the gates here. And I guess the question I'm going to start with Tracy. Tracy, I mean, I know it's obvious because of a lot of the economic situation and everything else, but what are the biggest challenges right now when it comes to employee retention? Is it just the fact that everybody's having to spend more on talent, so people are drawn away? What are the biggest changes right now, do you think?
A lot of it has to do with, making sure you have a great culture that attracts and retains the talent that you have. You really have to focus on retaining as many of the employees that you have right now, and doing things like employee engagement surveys and finding out what they really like and why they're staying in the first place is really good information. Finding out what kind of things, opportunities that you have that you're missing, especially if there's any low-hanging fruit that you can go after. So I would look for those kinds of things. And so those are some of them. I don't want to take all of the answers from Sarah and Irene, because I know they have great answers too. So.
No, but I think it's a great starting point, because so the first takeaway is look at who you already have in house, and
right.
what are the things that are causing them to stay, and those are your building blocks for moving forward. Irene, what are your thoughts as far as right now? What are the biggest challenges when it comes to retention?
Well, I think the landscape has changed so much over the past 2 years, and everybody will tell you that. And so where we may have thought of engagement in a more traditional sense, like employee surveys, pulse surveys, we now have all these new things we have to think about. We have a remote workforce. We have a hybrid workforce. We have, obviously, mental health has become a much more of an issue that we're talking about today. So there's different things I think that we're thinking about today than we might have thought about even a year or 2 years ago. And how do you keep these different groups of employees, the ones that are in office, the ones that are in and out of office, and the ones that are always out of office? How do you keep them all engaged?
Yes, you got a bunch of different landscapes. Sir, what about you? What are you finding are the biggest challenges when it comes to the retention piece?
A lot of the conversations I've had with our leadership team and our owners really revolves around a lot of our people. Everyone's being recruited right now, whether you've been there for 5 years, 10 years, 1 year. And so we have to focus in on where that person is at in their development. So making sure you're having those one-on-one conversations and knowing where they're at in their career, and maybe figuring out different ways that you can reskill them or grow them and develop them into different areas of your business. I mean, what is the next step for them, and showing them their growth potential for the company.
So
And
a career path.
keeping the temperature on where the company is going too, making sure everybody knows the vision.
Let's pause on that for a second. I think it's a great point. Tracy, I see you nodding. So
Yes.
career path, even
Yes.
for entry level workers, is that just something really critical?
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things that I would encourage people to do is even look at how the positions are advertised in the first place. If you're advertising a trainee position, that is not as appealing as maybe a management trainee position, to let them know that there is future in the role that that you are advertising, so that they'll know that there's additional steps with what you are hiring that person for. So even if you have like a compressed workforce or titles where people don't know what the levels are to get you to the leadership position, you might want to put in a senior position or an assistant manager role before they get to the manager role, and help them to know that that's what the career progression looks like, and look for opportunities to get them in advanced position, and also to prepare them for those future roles before they become available through a training program or creating a certification program within your organization that they could even put in their digital signature to show that they are leadership ready, or something to help people to identify that this is something desirable. I've done these kinds of things that really are important to the organization to show that I'm interested and committed into my career and advancing here. So those are some of the things definitely that organizations should consider doing.
Well, let me ask this, and Irene, I'm going to throw this one at you because I think this plays off of what Sarah just said. So since we're focusing on retention today, it is a really competitive marketplace, and there was a question that came in that basically said, how do we compete when companies are offering a lot more in their compensation packages outside of our company? So how do you combat that? Because not everybody is able to just continue to throw more money, more money, more money at this problem.
I think that's really true. I think there's several things. I think you need to first of all know if you are competitive. And so we just completed our annual compensation study across all of our positions, just so we really understand if we are competitive or not. And we can then use that information when we're having conversations with employees who may get an offer that we can't compete with, but yet we can ensure them that we are competitive, that paying for the position that they're in. So I think that's part of it, is sort of knowing if you are in a good competitive position as far as compensation. I think second, it's that culture. And Tracy mentioned culture, Sarah mentioned vision. And I think one of the things that we just completed our planning management meetings, and we included 15 of our leaders. We included all of our employees in helping to reestablish our core values, our core vision. We laid out our 10-year plan, 3-year plan, 1-year plan, and our goals. We're now communicating that to the whole organization and engaging everyone in those goals and in where we're moving forward. And we do that through a lot of ways, but I think really building a culture where people feel that they have satisfaction in what they do, that they're valued, and they take pride in what they do, goes a long way than just, let me give you $5,000 more.
I just love what you said too, and I had already said there were going to be a bunch of takeaways, and there are. So I love the fact that you said comp study, because how can you compete if you don't know where you stack up?
Yeah.
You've got to have that figured out, and then find creative ways to balance that. It isn't always about just the money going after it. And I love the fact that you said your planning meetings are everybody. You're talking about core values, that you're talking about that culture building. Sarah, do you guys adhere to any of those, or what are your thoughts as far as how do you, when somebody says, how do I compete with all these crazy compensation offers that are coming to, that are trying to pull our employees out of our space?
Mm-hmm. I actually have a great example of a situation a couple of weeks ago that fell across, and really it starts with your relationship that you have with the managers, and making sure that you've got a great communication one-on-one, because we actually had an employee that came to us that just started with the company about 8 months ago, and she previously was in the education field and got out of the education field due to some health things, but was actually considering going back. And she had talked to us about, I'm interviewing, and, you know, she felt safe enough to come to us and talk to us about, I'm interviewing right now, I'm considering going back to the education field. But we as a leadership team took that under our, you know, we all had communication with her and went over the total comp package. What can we do to help her with budgeting? I mean, we're not going to be able to, you know, we're paying her X amount of dollars. We can't, you know, pay her what an education salary would be, but where, you know, thinking about her mental health and where you're at. And so her feeling safe enough even to come, you know, psychological safety, I guess, is kind of what I refer that to, is she felt open enough to tell us, I'm interviewing for other places. So really it's developing that relationship in the very beginning and continuing it on in the communication, and then being able to open up, you know, and make sure you set out all the benefits that you have. And then again, we revisited with her about her career path with the company. And so she decided to turn down the education job and stay with us. So I thought that was a huge win. And I was really proud that, you know, she really took the time to think it through, and where she was the most happy in the last 8 months working. So it was
What a great working example.
Great
No, what a great
save,
working
right?
example.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing is about it, and I know I'm already reading Tracy's mind. When you said just now, you said she felt comfortable enough to come to management to tell you that. That's part of culture. That's part of
Mm-hmm.
something you've built. And before we go on to my next follow-up here, Tracy, you are nodding. That's gold right there, right?
It is gold. And, you know, the first word that Sarah said was relationship. And that is key in building relationships. There's no price people put on relationships. And what you'll do for someone who you believe cares for you, you do things that are beyond, it's not the financial investment anymore. It's about the relationship. And if you have a good enough relationship with your teammates and your people on who you work with, and they believe you have their best interests in mind, and that you treat them like they're important and they are important in the organization, you will get things that you can't put on paper. There's no way to compare, you know, to say that we won't be competitive. A relationship is something that's hard to replace and it's hard to put a price tag on. So building those relationships is really important. And Sarah, in conjunction with what you said, one of the things you can do to help foster those kind of relationships, especially cross-departmental, is to think about having a career fair for your employees, not for external people, but where all of the departments come and talk about the career opportunities. Because someone who is in your stores for sales might want to be in marketing and don't know how to get to marketing. And that's what they've gone to school for. And now they're looking for a job in marketing, and they didn't know when it's time for them to leave, they said, wow, I wish I would have known that there was other opportunities, but that's too late. So if they can start identifying who those people are in the organization early enough and establish relationships with those departments. If they want to work in HR, if they want to work in risk management, if they want to work in a different department that maybe they have never had access to those people, but that way they can start establishing rapport and a relationship even outside of their current managers, and that will help you to retain some of your employees as well.
There you go. I love that. An internal work fair. I wrote that down and underlined it. So Irene, let me ask you a question. This is one of the other questions that came in that I think fits with this. So this, this case study we just heard sounds fantastic. Now, however, we enter into this process, the fact that for those on the team who commission is all or part of their compensation, business has slowed down. We had everybody had a record year last year. So now, this question came in saying, what do you do now that businesses slow down and some people are seeing less of an opportunity to make money?
Well, I think in our industry where we have commissioned sales force, you have to make sure that there is the opportunity to earn an income and not overstaff the floors. And I think that's really important. And our sales associates are very sensitive to that. You need to continue to make sure that you're driving traffic, you're engaging customers, you're a great place for customers to come. So you need to continue all your marketing efforts and having great merchandise. But I do think you have to be very sensitive to associates in a commission environment. And, maybe as you're working through, you're doing training, listen, not everybody, it's the right person in the right seat. And somebody may say, this isn't for me. And maybe that's the time to really evaluate, do I need to replace that position at this particular time? Or do I just want to ensure that the folks that I have are going to make a good income and be happy here?
Okay. Sarah, how would you respond to that?
Obviously, there's a lot of recent challenges in this year, and I mean, just taking a hard look at your traffic that's coming in, but also really getting people to realize their potential and what they can do, and you know, work together to, you know, make sure they understand what their goals are, where we need them to be, to continue to staff the way we have. I mean, we've actually had to rethink. Just today I had a conversation to rethink about, do we really need to hire somebody, or can we get it done with the staff that we have now? And pulling back on hiring can be, you know, hard on an organization with, you know, especially if you want to, for retention, be able to give people days off, you know, in that in a sense, but also being able to still hopefully give them the paycheck that they want to earn. So really utilizing and reskilling, even if we need to from other positions that, you know, we can have in the organization. So
Yeah, you know, Sarah, you bring up a good point. You talked about reskilling. I think also at this time, training is so critical. This is
Mm-hmm.
the opportunity on our sales force to
Mm-hmm.
really focus on training and ensuring that the folks that we have are really knowledgeable, do the product training, do the selling skills, so that they're giving a customer a great experience. And it's an opportunity, to your point, for them to grow in position and grow their value.
Yeah,
And
what I
in conjunction, oh, sorry about that.
no, go
But
ahead, Trace.
one of the things, I mean, Irene and Sarah both talked about the training, but Irene talked about also knowing your long-term goals and plans, your 3-year and 5-year. So it's important to actually revisit those too, to make sure you're not making any short-term decisions that are going to impact your long-term plans. So you have to make sure that the decisions you're going to make when those slowdowns happen still fit within that plan. So you might want to look at how your workforce redevelopment might be changing in the next 3 years, and that can be what you're focusing your training on. You can also look and say, people want weekends off. We're going to give everybody a weekend off. We're going to rotate it during these slow periods of time, so that, you know, you have to figure out, how can I make this a win for people? And so, you know, heavily schedule some vacation times during those down periods of time, and make sure people have some of those things that they've been asking for. Everybody wants a weekend here and there off, especially during the summer when their kids are off. So encourage those kinds of things and make them a positive, that this is something we get to take advantage of during this period of time.
And you know, the training piece is you know, it's multidimensional, because that's a great contact point for you and your staff. It's you know, I just see so much, you know, more to that than just, oh, I'm increasing my knowledge. It really is more connective. You're giving them a tool to make more money, because they're more, because they are more of a resource and can really answer the questions the customer has. But also you're able to connect with them more, and you're showing them that you want to build, you know, build them as well. I think that's a brilliant piece to this, that is multifaceted, and, you know, in so many ways. And by the way, Sarah, I really appreciate you're bringing some real time, sounds like even from like the last couple of weeks, examples here, and those are always so powerful. So thank you for feeling comfortable enough to share. It is interesting, by the way, when we talk about this subject, that if I go to this the page of questions here, you know, it's like salary expectations, the ups and downs of commission sales, wage brackets, etc. And you know, it's something I think we need to pause, switch here, and talk about for a second. So there's a lot of, you know, Irene, you talked about hybrid work environment. There's a lot of hybrid pay structures right now. We know of retailers that are, their salespeople are 100% salaried. We know some that are salaried for the first 90 days, and then they float in some of the commission, and some are just a straight 100% commission. So let's round table this one and say, okay, right now, what are some of the best practices that can be put into place for those that are listening, to answer all of this, because there are so many particular options there. And let's see, I'll start with Irene.
Well, we have, over the past year, reevaluated our commission structure from we still are commission. We have not changed that. It's just the core of how we operate. But we have looked at extending the guarantee um, of their base. It used to be 60 days. It's now 120 days. We found that we have so many new people, and it was taking longer for people to get established, to learn everything because of the volume of new folks on the floor. We might, instead of hiring 1 or 2 in a store, we might be hiring 5 at one time. So we wanted to give them greater opportunity to really learn before we turned on 100% commission. So we've looked at things like that, looked at where we might need to make adjustments in the commission structure so that we can ensure that they were making a good income.
Is there an intentionality to the fact that you've gone to 120 days, which puts it 30 days outside the usual 90-day introductory period for an employee? Was that purposeful, or do you just feel that's just more based upon the fact that it should be 4 months instead of the 2 at the 60 days?
It was really based on evaluation of how long it was taking for folks to ramp up enough to have a good solid income.
Gotcha. Sarah, let's ask you that same question when it comes to this quandary, because everybody is clearly, by these questions, are struggling with what that structure looks like, and so many people are doing different things.
We also reevaluate our comp structure this year and pushed a new one out. But I mean, ultimately, it comes down to different levels of sales that they reach. We do also have a 90 to 120 day period just based on the comfort level and if they're passing, the training, and if the manager feels like they're ready, if they feel like they're ready, and we give them a base. And we have a base all the time, a bottom line that they're going to take home, just because there is a potential for them to have a couple of bad months in the beginning just because they're new. Obviously they have to pay for benefits and other bills, and so we do have that threshold, but obviously you're promoting it to, here's the potential that you can reach. And I think it's a good plan that we have, and of course constant communication with where they're at, and having them understand what all goes into that. We focus on, obviously, sales. Delivered sales is another piece of it. We've got their peace of mind, their protection plans. We've got other betting percentages. There's a whole kind of a gamut of different ways that they can increase their income. And so they have to focus on each and every customer and increasing that sales per guest or that average ticket. And we're talking about it all the time. And don't let that one person that you had walk out the door. And if you're not, we're talking actually about following up and just giving them all the tools and the resources to help, increase that, get that customer to come back if they left without buying.
And Tracy, from kind of from an overall perspective, industry-wide perspective, what are you seeing as some of the go-tos when it comes to these combinations? We heard one bit of commonality there is that there's been a lengthening of the onboarding piece when it comes to that transition to the commission sales. What else can you give us for some takeaways?
The one thing I would also encourage, I think both Sarah and Irene both said that they need to continuously reevaluate them, and that's important, but also include the people on the front line in the conversation. And you might want to do some roundtables and feedback sessions to get their ideas on how the commission plan can be structured, and then stress test those. Stress test them with some of the ideas that they've incorporated and get their buy-in, because if you have their buy-in and you created it, using their feedback, they're more likely to weather those storms with you and recognize that, that this is part of the process. So that's what I would encourage, is as much as you can involve people who are impacted by those decisions to be involved in creating that, then that's important. So.
Okay. And gosh, there's 2 ways I could go with this next question. I'm gonna jump down to this one. I'm just gonna go with my gut here. We all know that the first day of retention is the day that somebody's hired. This isn't something that you just say, okay, you're hired, and now in a while we'll work on retention. So clearly, the a huge piece of retention is that onboarding piece and that starting, that expectations off the top. Sarah, do you guys, is that something that is very, very purposeful for you all as far as those first few days and setting those expectations, et cetera? Talk a little bit about that for me.
Actually, to me, it starts in the recruiting phases and your initial interviewing. And you're trying to one, sell the candidate, and then when it comes down to the offer and them accepting, I think then you've got to, we've done a lot of things to create that wow factor of the candidate or the new hire that we've offered the position to. We'll send them before day one, we try to get them a little gift to their home, welcoming him to the team that's signed by the leadership team. Just a little thing of chocolates is really what it is. And then just constant communication and offer letter with, of course, their tasks and things that they need to be ready for on day one, but just making them feel so welcome on the first day. And they're typically with me for the first half of the day and going through, just really the culture is introducing them to the culture and what a great place this is going to be for them to work and meeting as many faces as they can. Just saying hello, interacting, and having that initial contact with as many employees that they're going to be working with potentially, but they may even come on to a different one of our locations for their first day too. But I feel like, that's going to be a critical thing and them understanding what their training plan is going to look like. I just feel like that's just critical and key to retain somebody in that, the way that those items are handled and that day one, they're really day 90 to 120. So communication.
And Irene, the thing that I'd love for you to pick up on that is that that's fantastic, but you better be sure that the days that follow that fit within that same field. We talked about that culture piece. So but does it, Sarah's talking about it starting even, way back in the recruiting process. Is that what is just necessary today is to start this retention piece as soon as your first touch point with the person?
I think so. I think that one, just like as you're going through recruiting, you really want to make them understand what your culture is like, what it's like to work here, a real world view. So we really do that through the recruiting process because we don't want somebody, we don't want to do this great sales job and then have somebody come in and have unrealistic expectations that we can't meet. We want, and it's about fit at that point, right? So we try to be very realistic. We really tell them what the company is like, what our history is like, what it's like to work here. And through our recruiting process, there are testimonials from other associates that they'll hear and see. And then the onboarding process happens immediately. We use a paperless onboarding that just flows right from the recruiting side. So they finish all that paperwork kind of stuff electronically before they're ever here for their first day. And then when they get here, they're really engaged then by the team. So we do have for sales, for instance, it's a 10-day blended learning approach that starts right away, but it involves a lot of activities with others on the floor, getting them connected with a mentor so that they start to have a friend right from the beginning. So you really do have to start right from the recruiting. It has to flow into onboarding and flow right into training and engagement from that first day. We also send a gift. We do the same thing. We send them a box and it welcomes them to the company and it has some of the tools they're going to need to do their job.
I got to say though, if it was me on the receiving end, if there's chocolate, I got to tell you, I'm saying yes to Sarah 10 times out of 10. No, I'm just teasing. Tracy, talk about this. We've got two somewhat different but somewhat very similar approaches here. Talk about the importance of this initial piece to the retention of everybody that you're bringing on.
Uh-oh.
I call this going from the me to we. Are we back?
A little bit of a delay, but you go ahead and talk. We're just not gonna watch your mouth move because it's not in sync.
Okay, so I call this from going from the me to we. And when people start, they often say, "Do you guys do this?" And you have to get them out of that, you guys, we're now we. You're a part of the we. And how do you take that person from seeing themselves as an outsider to making them an insider, and really helping them to understand who your culture is? How do we engage with people? What does our brand mean to someone else? Are we going to be the Target, or are we going to be, a Walmart? When you think about the culture, what kind of impression are we making on people? And they have to see themselves as part of the we in order to accomplish that culture. And so you have to be able to define what that culture is, what you intend to, how the impression you intend to make on people, and how you plan to deliver the service really early. So I love what both Sarah and Irene said about being very intentional. And even after that first day, all of the departments need to have an outline of what it looks like for the next few days for their onboarding beside their initial orientation. So it's important that, and I like what Irene really said about bringing them in with a group, and I think Sarah does it as well. Them having their own little cohort, many of them like stay together and they're calling each other, and it's great for them to have a group of people who they know are coming in and starting at the same time, dealing with some of the same challenges, who they can talk to. So those are all great ideas that both Sarah and Irene both talked about, and I love that you guys are doing a welcome gift and to really help them and early on understand that we want you to be a part of our team. So
Good news is, by the way, you're back in sync. It was only about 15 seconds, so we got you back fully integrated here, which is great because it was a little bit weird at the beginning, but it's all good. We love technology. Let's do some a little more rapid fire questions here. And this one is just, it amazes me that this is on here because Sarah, you brought it up without even being asked. Is it, how do you encourage new hires to discuss any issue with their managers? So how'd you do that? You had somebody feel good enough to come forward. How does that happen?
It starts just with that initial, you're building those relationships. And, I would say in our locations, our people are even engaged with the owners. The owners are present, our directors are present, and then of course their managers are always present. And so it just starts with building trust and building the relationship and checking in. It's honestly, as a manager, you should be checking in all the time with your employees. How's it going? It doesn't have to be business all the time either. Mm-hmm. Somebody cares about you as a person and what's going on outside, and you've got all this. All of us have lives outside of work, right? That we're trying to juggle too, and just checking in and recognizing that piece of it too, and being able to trust, to have that discussion. And if you see somebody that may look like they're going through a challenge that day, just having, as a manager, saying, is everything okay? Do you need to go have a quick chat? Can I help you with something? Is there something I can do to help you?
I'll let either you, Irene or Tracy, jump in if you want on that too, as far as encouraging new hires to feel comfortable to bring things to management. Any other thoughts to add to that?
Well, yeah, I think I would say this: people work for people. They don't work for companies. It's nice to think that, and we do sell the culture and all of that, but ultimately when they get here, people work for people. And really training your supervisors how to care, how to be an empathetic leader. We did a book club, which I thought was great. It was, how to be a great supervisor. And it was just 101 kind of stuff. It was nothing that was earth-shattering. It was very basic, but we did it with all of our supervisors, and it was a book club. So we did it over lunch, and they chatted about what the chapter was that they had read, but it was really all about connecting with people, caring about people, listening to people. And I think that you just have to constantly work on that as a management team with your supervisors to really engage with people.
And really, I think what you said, Irene, is brilliant. And because I think it's the little things that lead to the big things. Like if someone said their dog was sick, don't just say, oh, and go about your business. Ask them later on, how's your dog doing? Those things are very meaningful to someone to say, oh, wow, they're checking back to see how my dog is doing. Those things help to establish and build relationships. And I think, as an HR department and as an organization, there's lots of opportunities when life events happen that can demonstrate that you really care. When someone calls and says, hey, I lost a family member, are you sending them a card? Or just saying, when will you be back? Many people just say you get 3 days and read off the policy to them. Those are missed opportunities to demonstrate that you care about them. When they have a baby, are you checking on them even while they're out on leave? And occasionally saying, hey, what's the baby's name? Let's send pictures. How are you doing? And just checking in to see how they're doing and saying, hey, if you have a chance to swing by, everyone would love to see your baby. This is the best time. They usually know. And come by for 15 minutes, so establish the groundwork for it. But there's ways of demonstrating that you care about a person, and there's lots of opportunities to do that. So,
and it's interesting because there's a lot of our members are single store operators, and they're the ones who do this really well right now because it's a smaller staff and they really have that. And you're kind of saying just make sure not to lose that sight, no matter how big the team might be. Are there KPIs that any of you guys utilize? Because that's always something that comes up in these questions. And this person listening in said, what are other furniture retailers' average annual turnover percentages? Do you metric that? Do you have KPIs specific to that? I see you guys nodding. So Irene, go start us out.
Yeah, we monitor turnover all the time. We also monitor retention at different points through the process. So turnover is one thing because there's unhealthy turnover, but sometimes there's some healthy turnover as well. But turnover over the last 2 years has certainly been higher than it's been for us traditionally. I think that's probably true of most businesses. But we also really look at retention, and we're very intentional about that because you want to see how long you're retaining people, where are they starting to fall off specifically? Is there something that's happening? Maybe you're doing great through that first 30 days, but all of a sudden they kind of start to get lost. So we monitor that as well very much. So we're doing an engagement study. So that's another way we're doing look at our engagement scores by location, by job. How are we doing? How does it compare to the prior year? So those are the kinds of KPIs I would certainly be looking at.
Any other KPI thoughts, Sarah, Tracy?
one of the things that I thought about is to really look at your demographic KPIs as well. So Irene talked about looking at like maybe tenure, but you might want to also look at like the different job classifications. Is it new hires? Is it middle management? Is it, different levels? Is it an age group that's leaving? Is it a gender that is leaving? Is it a racial group that's leaving? Is it what demographic is being impacted the most? So if you can slice and dice your demographics even further to see there might be something underlying that you're not figuring out, that you can look more into that data and see if there's an issue there. Of course, there's good turnover as well, but I like that Irene said to focus on the retention more than the turnover. You should be looking at your retention rate, not necessarily your turnover rate, which is just the inverse.
And it's interesting because one of the things you just said made me think about the fact that also it's demographics, but also it's timing. If you're losing people at the 60 to 70 day point, then that's telling you there might be a gap in your process or something sitting there. Sarah, quick, any thoughts about KPIs or?
Yeah, just one of the things that we've been measuring. Actually, we're measuring at for the third time in a rolling 12 months is just our employer net promoter score. So all our employees, would they refer somebody to come work for the company? And that's usually a part of those engagement surveys that we take. But I just feel like that's a good pulse on a lot of the times too where your employees are at. Okay. But we also do the turnover and engagement percentage overall. So
super helpful. Boy, there's one section. We always have these by subject matter. There's one section where it's really more kind of a lot of behavioral stuff. So here we go for the these would be like the toss-up questions here. So how do I Keep the good and get rid of the bad.
No, I think that one's not so hard. I think that accountability is key. I think people have to really know what they're being held accountable to. So what is the expectation? You know, give them all the tools to reach that expectation, but be very, very clear in what the expectation is. And then really a lot of times people will self-select out if they know they can't meet it. So it doesn't become kind of a performance management process as much as it really comes down to being very clear in expectations and then using tools to help managers manage to those expectations. And that's what we would do.
You know, I often see when people are doing performance reviews that they're very metric driven on things like their sales performance or, you know, different kinds of elements that you can track. But one of the things that I think is missing when people evaluate performance is ability to get along with others. Because, you know, when you're dealing with a work jerk, that's what I call them, the work jerk. We all have dealt with work jerks. You know, those people can be toxic to an environment. And I think that it should be incorporated into performance reviews is getting along with others and their ability to you know, demonstrate empathy or work well with clients. And that is an important key element for success that has to be stressed, and it should be in job descriptions. It should be a part of the interview process to see how they work well with others, and a part of the review process, because people shouldn't be successful only because they can sell or produce or perform the job when they're being toxic and creating a horrible work environment for everyone else.
Well, I think you take your core values and you tie them to your core competencies. And that's part of our review. It's part of job descriptions and it's part of expectations as much as the KPIs.
And it's interesting because there was a question about these bad, they refer to it here as bad influencers, not work jerks, but we know what you're saying. So that kind of covered that one there. Sarah, how can
Yeah.
oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was actually going to say this is a huge part of
Jump.
retention.
Right.
On if you let a behavior go on, so it really starts with management, because if they're involved and they see these behaviors, these bad behaviors, and they're not addressing those ASAP, you're going to lose people. So that's the key, though, is management has to take ownership. One, they do have to know the expectations, but if you're letting that behavior continue, let's say an employee's even just attendance is not good, and you're letting that go, then that's not going to be a good thing for the organization. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, this is you may feel free to interrupt, and I'm gonna quote our Chief Operating Officer Shannon Williams, who always has said, as long as I've known her, she says, "Whatever you permit, you promote." And I just think that is just exactly what you talked about. So this is what I was going to ask you, Sarah, but I'm going to give you, I'm just going to round up with another question here. Here's the question: how can I instill a sense of ownership to my team members? I'm gonna let you start that one.
You know, I guess I could just relate this to my own personal career here, and that's, you know, you 100% have to know the expectations, and if you don't, you need to ask questions. You cannot be afraid to go to that next level manager or even ask advice. I think that's, maybe I didn't understand the question, but you know, being accountable yourself to, if you're not meeting the expectations, reaching out for more training or development, and understanding, you know, what is expected of you.
Wow. So you're, I
Setting
just want to
timelines,
I
goals.
want to make sure, I understand what you're saying. So you're basically saying for you to instill a sense of ownership in team members, you have to exhibit a sense of ownership and buy into that. Is that fair?
I think so. Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That was a good answer. Irene, do you have any thoughts on that? Because I think it's a great question. Instilling a sense of ownership. I like that word to my
Yeah.
team members.
So I think you do that. I think Sarah's spot on. I think another way that you do that is sort of the process that we just went through, which is that planning process and really kind of understanding where the company is going, what the expectations are, what the goals are, what we have to reach to be successful, but then communicating that in various ways with various groups through the organization so that everybody feels that they're a part of that. So we do that. We're doing a communication process in June to go through with every group in a variety of ways, stand-up meetings, virtual meetings, webinars, to talk about what our one-year plan is and our quarterly goals, and make sure that everybody's on the same page. And then we also do a monthly business broadcast. So it's a Teams meeting, people can call in, and our owners, our leadership team, every month talks about the state of the place. How did we do last month? Where are we at? What do we need to do in the coming month? Is there anything everybody needs to be aware of? And I think that keeping people informed and is a big part of engagement.
Tracy, this retention stuff is a full-time job. Holy smokes.
It is. It is. And when you think about the operating budget of an organization, about half of it goes towards employees. And so that's how important it is to put some energy and effort into retaining your employees. They're half of your operating expense. So it deserves that kind of attention. And I think we just have to approach it that way.
And remember, and you know this, and I think most people do, but I always say it again just to affirm this, is it is far less expensive to retain an employee than it is to replace an employee. So there is return here that is absolutely critical. So here's a great question, and I'll throw this out as a toss-up question. So this is someone that works in this one says marketing, but I'm thinking about this from really any department. It says, I feel I have very little interaction with new employees. So that's kind of an interesting, that's not fully a question there, but there's a question within that comment. Talk about that for a minute, because we've heard so much about culture and all this involvement. It seems like this is somebody that's just basically saying, I'm part of the team, but I don't feel like I'm touching the new employees very much, or that I'm getting to interact with them. What is that telling us? Is that just a culture, a bad culture issue, or is this something that tells you that you don't really have a program that's truly, really bringing everybody into the loop? What are some thoughts about that?
Well, I think that you have to have regular meetings as a team and include everybody, right? So if this person isn't meeting the new people in their department, maybe they're not having regular meetings as a department to share ideas, work on projects, share thoughts. I think the other thing too is, as a company, and this is not always easy to do, it's easy to say, but you have to be very intentional about it. And that is getting out in the stores, having people walk in everyone else's shoes. So trying to get managers from the stores to go out on a delivery truck and get to know what that side of the business is like, and have the folks from operations get out into the stores and understand what the stores are up against. I think by doing that, when you're problem solving in departments and working together, you get to know people through interaction. But I would say that you would definitely want to make sure that people are included, that there's more team discussion, and even cross-departmental work.
Sarah, let me make this kind of a real-time case study here, since you've had some great examples today. So how would you handle that if someone came from a department and just said, I don't feel like I'm interacting at all with new employees? How would you respond to that, and what would that kind of inherently tell you?
I would say, well, I would ask them for their recommendations and their suggestions on how they would like to be more involved. And then I would say, would you like us to set up a virtual call or a one-on-one when we onboard this new person? I mean, it could be as simple as an introduction, 5 minute. The person could say, hey, I'm Sarah, and I'm the Director of Talent and Employee Experience for Home Trends. And this is how long, just a real quick introduction call, and this is how you can work with me. And maybe there's something that person wants to get out to new people on how they work together, and so maybe that's just a script that they have every single time someone starts. I guess it kind of depends on how large the organization is, and
Sure.
a small one like mine, that would be a reasonable expectation to meet. So,
and Tracy, I think what I'm hearing there too, when somebody asks that question, is that somebody that wants to be more involved, and you got to, in some ways, honor that, right?
Well, yeah, I love the ideas that both Sarah and Irene said. So if there's opportunities to welcome new people, and and you're saying that you have people on your team who want to, that is a great problem. It's important to even help to identify who these new people are. So if you have an intranet and you can post their picture up and people can say welcome and send little welcome notes to them, or some way to say, there's e-cards that you can set up that people can send to people. So it's not really like you don't have to think of something clever to do, but they can just say welcome. And if you ever have any questions about marketing, come see me. I'd love to talk to you about marketing. And so it's a nice way to set up a way to welcome new people and for them to meet people across the different parts of the organization. So, and if someone said that to me, I would say, I would love to hear your insight on how we could do a better job of welcoming new people so that everyone feels like they have an opportunity to be involved in this process. So I would solicit their ideas to how could we do a better job of making sure that that person feels welcome and that you feel like you also get an opportunity to know them.
Awesome. All right, we're going to do some, the last few minutes we have here, we're going to do one little, throw them out here for everybody to jump in on. Do today's candidates think about long-term employment? That's a question, or do you find that most are just kind of like not really certain that they're already thinking about career path and that sort of thing?
I mean,
So
everything that I've been reading is, their candidates today are looking for development and growth. It may not just be the paycheck. And so you've got to sell them on what's in it for them from a development standpoint. We've got a lot of great things in our organization that we do, and that's an ongoing monthly leadership academy that we call it. And we just do different topics like, and it's for everybody in our organization. So that's one of the things that I sell. We have a culture impact team is what we call it. And it's really to help, like Irene, you said you're opening new stores. It's really developing a group that's going to help me go train the culture in these new stores that we eventually open. And so I always present those things, and our vision of the company is to impact 500,000 families. And so not just from a development standpoint, but like we're wanting to impact lives through volunteering and community service and customer service. And we want to impact your life and your, so I think, again, as human resources professionals, we're not just HR professionals. We're in sales too here. So in order to retain, you've got to build that story, but also be able to show them. I usually do presentations sometimes with candidates that, I am sourcing. Hey, can you get on a call with me? Let me show you all the cool things. So the development, the impact that you're making on the communities is key in our organization.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sarah, and I think those are great, definitely great things. Your Leadership Academy is sort of like our book club kind of thing that we're doing, as well as some roundtables and all those traditional things. But you asked the question, do people today want to have a long-term career with you? I think it's as different as the people that come into the company. Some may be here for a shorter, they may think they're going to be here for a shorter time because they're working to go through school, or they're working towards something else in the future, maybe owning their own business. But I think it's very different. So I think you have to be able to kind of know that not everybody's going to want to be the 40-year employee, and maybe that's not so bad.
And I think that what both Sarah and Irene said is that these are individualized experiences and people want to be treated as an individual. And if you can find out what their career goals are, what they're looking for, and often what happens is they're kind of dipping their toe in the water, this is a test run for them with the role that they've taken. And most people, that's not where they want to end up. So whether or not you are able to retain them, that's up to you if you can help match their career ambitions with an experience that matches within that organization for them.
So there's a couple of questions here that I think are other HR professionals in our industry that are begging for help. How to convince leadership that hiring the person is step one of many as we retain our employees. So let's talk about the communication up the ladder. It sounds to me like Sarah and Irene, I can't imagine you don't have support from the higher ups based upon all the things you've talked about. But how would you convince? Help them out a little bit here as far as what are the things that you would suggest they say that can really let their leadership understand the importance of the retention piece?
Well, I think obviously it's important for leaders to understand. I think most leaders really understand retention. It's talked about so much, but I think that when we talk about our business, and there's so much to learn in our business. Our business is not an easy business that you just come in and bring up a sale. There's a lot of education and it takes time to know everything. So it's important to build that expertise. And I think that as people join your company and they stay with you longer, they bring so much more to the table, because to Tracy's point, they may move through different positions and they bring that knowledge from the first position to the second, and they develop and they have a broad understanding of the business as they're growing through the business. So I think that having leaders really understand the impact that people make as they stay with the business, you just give them the examples of people who have been successful, who have brought a lot to the table.
And one of the things that, when Irene was talking about developing that long-term plan, the 3-year, the 5-year, and with the vision, the mission, the values, is often people don't share the succession plan with employees. And I think it's actually a good idea. I'm not talking about adding the names into it, but talking about where we're looking to grow, how they can see themselves as part of this organization as it grows. And so I think it's important that we don't put these things on a shelf only for the top leaders to look at, but to share the vision and the plans of the organization with employees, and they can say, oh, okay, we're going to be growing more. So I don't have to wait until this person dies to get a leadership position. And so if they understand that there's room for them at the table and they know what it'll take to get there, a lot of people will be more willing to put in the effort and energy to do that.
Yeah, I just want to point out, by the way, and I'm going to ask Caprice and our team to put up the full screen here, because if you thought this was a valuable conversation today, this is one of many, and we have an HR section of our website that is absolutely an incredible resource. It's go.myhfa.org/HR. That's where you're going to find a lot more from Tracy, and also just all these subject matters. These are deeper dives that will really help you, and all of it is very, very germane to what's happening right now. And also want to point out, of course, that as I mentioned, this webinar is on demand. So please feel free. You're going to get the link yourself, but you can share it. And we want to make sure that these incredible number of takeaways, I've completely lost count from today, that they will absolutely be of a value to you. Sarah, I just have to say something in these last couple of seconds here. You came to this conversation very humbly in certain ways, but I have to tell you something. I think that what you're doing there, and it doesn't matter the size of your company, is incredible. It's so clear that your leadership, you in particular, and everybody else, are doing some really incredible best practices there. It's really obvious, and I know I see the other ladies nodding. They know what an absolute superstar that you clearly are. And so Sarah Luther, Director of Talent and Employee Experience at Home Trends, I thank you. Irene, once again, thank you for the clarity you've brought from all the challenges that you have. She's Senior VP of Human Resources for Levin and John B. Schultz. And Tracy, you're just nodding like crazy because you know that there were some gems here today. A quick final word from you as our HFA Chief HR Strategist, real quick.
I just think that if you have questions or things you want us to focus some energy and effort on that you are interested in, please let us know. We want to bring these topics to you in creating some quick videos. We want to have these kind of discussions with you. We want to hear from you, and we want you to take advantage of the resources that you have available to you. So, I just encourage you to be engaged and to use your resources and to network with your peers as much as you can, because there are a lot of great ideas and solutions that are available to you right at your fingertips. And I think you should try to do your best to take advantage of those.
And that's what we are here for at HFA as your association. On behalf of the association, I want to thank you for joining us today. I want to, as always, wish you good health and great sales. And we will see you next time. I'm Mark Schumacher. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.